Stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the manfromleng. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I am reviewing the rogue cards in the Dream Eaters, the 5th Deluxe expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support and Cole Munro Chitty for his fantastic art. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these reviews. If you'd like to become a patron to support the channel's goals and see your name in lights, follow the link down below, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. The first rogue card in the pack is Crystallizer of Dreams. It's a 1-cost rogue asset with a willpower skill icon in the item and relic traits. As an additional cost to put the Crystallizer of Dreams into play, you must search your bonded cards for 1 copy of Guardian of the Crystallizer and shuffle it into your deck. Crystallizer of Dreams has the following response. After you play an event, attach it face down to Crystallizer of Dreams instead of discarding it to a maximum of 5 attached events. Attached events may be committed to skill tests as if they were in your hand. Crystallizer of Dreams takes up an accessory slot. Guardian of the Crystallizer is an enemy weakness. It has 3 fight, 3 health, and 3 evade. It has the Bonded and Hunter keywords. Its prey is the Investigator with the Crystallizer of Dreams only. Guardian of the Crystallizer enters play exhausted. It has the following forced effect. If there is no Crystallizer of Dreams in play, set Guardian of the Crystallizer aside out of play. Guardian of the Crystallizer will hit you for 1 damage and 1 horror. Crystallizer of Dreams is one of the more interesting rogue cards to be released of late. The card works similar to talents such as Hard Knocks, Streetwise, and High Ruler, with the exception being that you quote-unquote load the Crystallizer with skill icons from events that you play, which you may later spend to boost your base skill value during skill tests. This ability to double dip, that is, play an event for its ability, stack it on the Crystallizer, and then commit it to a later skill test, makes it a very appealing addition to decks as long as you're playing enough events to support it. Rogues have plenty of events from which to choose if they're looking to load up the Crystallizer. In the rogue card pool alone, there are 32 events ranging from core set classics such as Backstab and Sneak Attack to more recent additions such as Think on Your Feet 2. Cards that double up on combat, intellect, and agility skill icons such as Coup de Grace, Decoy, Intel Report, Narrow Escape, Small Favor, and Swift Reflexes are a great addition to a Crystallizer deck. Intel Report, for example, has quickly become a favorite of rogues who want to discover clues without making skill tests. You may play Intel Report to discover 1 or 2 clues at a location, stack it on the Crystallizer, and then commit the Intel Report to an intellect skill test during a future investigate action, improving the odds of grabbing even more clues. That's a pretty sweet deal if you can pull it off consistently. The Crystallizer of Dreams is a level 0 card, so it's an option for off-class rogues such as Leo Anderson, Lola Hayes, and Wendy Adams. The Crystallizer has the Relic trait, which means its Ursula Downs may also play it. I took a look at a few Leo, Lola, and Ursula decks, and they don't play a ton of events, but you could certainly experiment with the Crystallizer in a more event-heavy build. For example, Leo can play cards such as Coup de Grace and Intel Report, while Ursula Downs can play Logical Reasoning and Unearth the Ancients. Lola, of course, has her signature card, Improvisation, which has 2 juicy wild icons that would be very nice to stack on the Crystallizer, though she would need to be a rogue to trigger the Crystallizer's response after she played it. Wendy Adams has a natural affinity for events due to her signature asset, Wendy's Amulet, so she might be interested in the Crystallizer as well. Keep in mind, however, that the forced effect on the Amulet trumps the response on Crystallizer, so there's not much point to having them both on the table at the same time because you will never be able to stack that event on the Crystallizer. It's worth noting that the Crystallizer of Dreams and Wendy's Amulet both take up an accessory slot, so you won't be able to have them both on the table at the same time unless you're willing to spend some experience points on a card like Relic Hunter. While the Crystallizer gives investigators a great way to squeeze a little extra mileage out of every event they play, it does have a significant downside. The Crystallizer is bonded to an enemy weakness, the Guardian of the Crystallizer. We've seen cards bonded to weaknesses before in this expansion, namely the Hungering Blade, Calamitous Blade of Celiphae, and Bloodlust, and players appear to be quite reluctant to add any more weaknesses to their deck than necessary. After all, weaknesses do screw up your draw, and they usually impose some sort of tax on an investigator's actions, which is certainly the case with the Guardian. Unlike the Hungering Blade and Bloodlust, you shuffle only one copy of the Guardian of the Crystallizer into your deck. However, once Guardian hits the table, you've got only one round of grace period before the Guardian begins to hunt you down and tax your actions. The Guardian has 3 fight and 3 health, which makes it a little more resilient than most players would like. Killing the Guardian will take 2 or 3 actions depending on what you've got on hand for weapons. Otherwise, you've got to avoid the Guardian by moving around the board, which may not be possible depending on the location layout, or evade it. Either way, you're going to spend a bunch of actions dealing with the Guardian that would probably be better spent elsewhere. I haven't had a chance to play the Crystallizer of Dreams myself yet, but I did have a great opportunity to see it in action during Arkham Nights 2019, where my teammate Brandon from the Optimal Play YouTube channel was using it in his Finn Edwards deck. From my vantage point at cross table, it seemed as though Brandon was able to get quite a bit of value out of Crystallizer with cards such as Intel Report. However, the Guardian of the Crystallizer was a real pain when it hit the table, because one of us, usually Raphael, who was playing Rita, had to spend some of his precious actions to deal with it. I asked Brandon about his thoughts on the Crystallizer after playing 8 scenarios with it, and his take on the card was decidedly mixed. While the Crystallizer felt really good in combination with other rogue cards in this box, such as Easy Mark, Brandon said it felt as though the card didn't generate as many skill icons as some of the other talents available, such as Well Prepared or High Roller. The Guardian of the Crystallizer was another sore spot. Brandon said the Crystallizer felt great in games when he didn't draw the Guardian. If the Guardian did hit the table, which seemed to happen in almost every scenario, the Crystallizer didn't seem quite worth it. It's also worth mentioning that Brandon felt the card does have a high skill cap. There were many times during the Forgotten Age campaign when Brandon had to decide whether to commit one of his events to a skill test or hang on to it in the hope of eventually playing it and stacking it on the Crystallizer. Looking back on the campaign, Brendan said there were definitely situations when he was a little too greedy, hanging on to events that he should have committed to skill tests. After watching Brandon play the Crystallizer during a campaign, I'm not quite as enthusiastic about the card as I might have been otherwise. On the one hand, I really like the Crystallizer because it lets you leverage your events for their abilities as well as their skill icons. Playing an Intel Report, stacking it on the Crystallizer, and then committing it to a skill test for its 2 intellect skill icons is a very strong play. You could say the same about any number of the rogue events out there, depending on whether you need to evade, fight, or investigate. However, I've also seen firsthand how annoying the Guardian of the Crystallizer can be, and that was in a 4-player game where Brandon had 3 other players to help him deal with it when it hit the table, which seemed to happen all too frequently. I can imagine the Guardian being even more disruptive in solo play, especially if you're playing an investigator who is ill-equipped to take it out permanently. I'm not a big fan of cards that force me to do a lot of extra work, either to get them into play in the first place or deal with the negative consequences of having them in play. I'm not going to rule out playing the Crystallizer of Dreams, but rogues do have quite a few talents to choose from at this point in the game's life cycle. I'd probably consider playing them over the Crystallizer, especially in solo where I really don't want to have to worry about dealing with that extra enemy. The second rogue card in this box is Easy Mark. It's a free rogue event that costs 1 experience point. It has intellect and agility skill icons and the trick trait. It has the myriad keyword and the following game text: gain 2 resources and draw 1 card. Response: after you play Easy Mark, play another Easy Mark from your hand at no cost. Easy Mark was everywhere at Arkham Nights 2019. I played it in a Tony Morgan build that I threw together at the last minute for a standalone, and I saw it played in many a deck, and for good reason. Easy Mark is among the better cards with the myriad keyword released in the Dream Eaters Deluxe expansion, and by better I mean you'll probably want to pick up all 3 copies for 1 experience point. Cards and resources that make the world go round in the Arkham Horror LCG, and Easy Mark provides a little of both with the prospect of some action compression slathered on top for good measure. As with all the myriad cards, the chance of seeing all 3 copies of Easy Mark so you can play them for 1 action is pretty remote, but there is a decent chance of playing 2 copies for a total of 4 resources and 2 cards in 1 action. If you're playing a typical 33 card deck, you've got about a 34.64% chance of drawing one copy in your opening hand and a 40% chance of drawing more than one. If you mulligan aggressively, the odds of drawing one or more than one copy rise to 38.61% and 45.94% respectively. If you happen to draw both of your weaknesses in your opening hand, you can push those odds slightly higher. The odds of starting with 2 copies of Easy Mark in your hand aren't quite 50%, but I'd be very happy to start slightly less than half of scenarios in a campaign with an additional 4 resources and 2 cards. Easy Mark is quite similar to Emergency Cash from the core set, but it does have certain advantages over its neutral counterpart. For one thing, it's got skill icons. Easy Mark also synergizes with Crystallizer of Dreams from this deluxe box, as well as Double Double from Before the Black Throne. I can certainly get behind the idea of gaining 4 resources and drawing 2 cards with 2 Easy Marks, stacking them on the Crystallizer, and then committing them to skill tests for their Intellect and Agility skill icons. I also like the idea of playing Easy Mark and then triggering Double Double. Triggering Double Double on an Easy Mark nets you 4 resources and 2 cards off of a single card, 6 resources and 3 cards if you are able to trigger Easy Mark's response in the process. If you do happen to draw that 3rd copy of Easy Mark, then you can double that as well. There are quite a few investigators who would be interested in purchasing Easy Mark, but there are a couple that I'd like to single out. Easy Mark is an event, so Safina Russo and Wendy Adams should immediately come to mind. It also has the trick trait, so it is an option for Rita Young too. If you're going to defeat scenarios in the Arkham Horror LCG, you need cards and resources. Easy Mark provides a little of both. If you can draw 2 or even 3 copies of Easy Mark at the same time, you might even save yourself 1 or 2 actions over the course of a scenario. That's not bad for 1 experience point. If you're playing a rogue or off-class rogue that uses Emergency Cash, then Easy Mark is worth a look. It doesn't generate as many resources as its core set counterpart, but it does replace itself and offers much better synergy with certain other rogue cards that are available. If you're playing a quote-unquote big money rogue or off-class rogue who is interested only in generating as many resources as possible, Hot Streak 2 or 4 are probably better options depending on your deck building restrictions. That's going to do it for my review of the rogue cards in the Dream Eaters. Crystallizer of Dreams is worth a look if you're playing a deck that leans heavily into events. The prospect of playing an event and then committing it to a skill test at some point down the road is very appealing. However, I'm not crazy about the idea of adding another weakness to my deck. Enemies, especially those with 3 health, have a way of taxing your actions whether you decide to kill them outright or evade them repeatedly. Then again, the Guardian of the Crystallizer may be a minor speed bump for combat-oriented investigators such as Leo Anderson and Tony Morgan. After watching our group grapple with the Guardians scenario after scenario at Arkham Nights 2019, I'm not convinced the Crystallizer's ability is strong enough to warrant the hassle caused by the Guardian. Easy Mark, on the other hand, is a card worth embracing. Big money rogues will likely stick with either level of Hot Streak, but for other investigators who have been playing Emergency Cash, Easy Mark is a nice, relatively cheap upgrade. While the odds of triggering all 3 copies with any consistency are pretty low, triggering 2 seems feasible with a little luck and or patience. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed this review, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Head over to Patreon to sign up to become a patron of the channel and claim your rewards. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.